From the banks of Dewey Lake, it's the Dewey Pod Monster.
All right, welcome back. My name is John, and this is the Dewey Pod Monster Podcast. This is your weekly podcast about consumption, and we are members of the You Run Podcast Network. You can find all our episodes at yourunpodcast.com, as well as all the other great shows on the You Run Podcast Network. With me this week is the host of the Dewey Pod Monster Podcast. His name is Sean, and Sean, how the fuck are you doing today?
John, my boy, how are you? How are your New Year's resolutions holding out?
Totally dodged the question. I appreciate that. And I didn't make resolutions. I don't really believe in New Year's resolutions. I think if you want to change something, you shouldn't have to wait till the beginning of the year. It's a cop-out.
New year, new you.
No. New Year's, same everything. Everything sucks. It's still, same.
Everything's still on fire.
Yeah. Michigan's still winning games. They suck. I'm mad. Lions are still getting screwed by the refs. Same year. Well, I guess the Lions getting screwed by the refs would have been last year at this point. But I digress. What have you been watching the last week or two? It's been a couple weeks since we recorded. It has an episode, isn't it?
It's been a little bit. There's a bunch of stuff I watched, and I actually thought about it today, and I write this stuff down so I know what I can talk about and remember what to talk about. So I'll just briefly dip my toe into a few things. I watched Squid Game, The Challenge on Netflix. We sat down and watched all 10, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 episodes. I don't remember how many it is.
The cartoon one, or is that the first one?
There's a No, I didn't know there was a cartoon. No, it's like
I thought I heard there was a cartoon.
It's a game show based on the show. So all the games that they play on Squid Game, the show, they do as a game show. Instead of dying, they have little squibs in some of the events. So when they get out, they'll like pop under their shirts, and they must have told them when the thing pops, fall down dramatically, because they all kind of like just splay out.
Yeah.
That was okay. It was pretty interesting. It was like,
I never watched the original show.
It's a good show.
Yeah, I've heard mixed things on it. It kind of reminded me of Battle Royale, which I'm assuming you've seen that at some point. But that was just from like one person's description. I would guess that the actual show is not really like that.
No, not really. Basically, they go through challenges, and if you don't win, when you're eliminated, you get killed. Yeah. So anyways, watch that. Watch The Challenge, Squid Game. Watch Sisu, which I told you it would be a movie that you'd want to watch. That's from 2022. It's a Finnish movie. It's got some of our friends from the shows, from, what is it? Rare Exports, from Rare Exports.
Oh, yeah.
The dad and the son from Rare Exports are in Sisu on opposing sides. Basically like a Finnish legend about this guy who, I don't even know if it's a real, I think it is based on a real character, but Sisu's like this untranslatable word that basically captures the essence of grit, Finnish people. I guess I just translated it, so that whole explanation went down the toilet. Other than that, I finally, because I don't know, this gets beaten over my head that I didn't watch Jaws, and I finally watched Jaws, talked about it with Jordana since we last spoke on the podcast, or last recorded, I guess. Spoiler, Jaws is a good movie. I'm an idiot because I didn't watch it sooner.
I wouldn't go that far.
As I've
You're a contrarian. That doesn't make you an idiot.
I'm just an idiot otherwise, but as I've explained multiple times now, I think just through osmosis of Jaws and popular culture, it's kind of hard not to at least know what Jaws is about. The name's kind of self-explanatory.
The one about the dinosaurs, right?
Yes, exactly. That's the one about the dinosaurs from the past that come back to the future. I also, on that note...
in the DeLorean.
Yes. Marty McDinosaur.
It's really impressive seeing Marty McDinosaur drive the DeLorean with those short arms.
They have those extending steering wheels so they can get real close. That's a adaptation they had to make for dinosaurs. I
just thought that's how they made dinosaur cars.
Well, they don't all have short arms.
Well, the cool ones do.
Debatable. On the note of watching classic movies, I watched Chinatown from, I believe, 1974 with Jack Nicholson. And he plays some guy. I'm going to cut that out because I don't remember his name. That's a really cool kind of neo-noir. I mean, it's set in the 30s in LA. If you haven't seen Chinatown, it's about the land rights and water and all this stuff in LA to make LA, like expanding LA out of just being this small town. Have you ever seen Chinatown?
I have not. You talked a little bit more in depth on this one on the live stream we did, which would have came out right before the new year at this point. So you could always go back and listen to that if you want to hear more of us talking about it. But no, I haven't seen that. And honestly, it's not even really been on when someone brings up the movie Chinatown, like, I'm like, oh yeah, I should probably watch that at some point. But it's one of those movies that as soon as the conversation's done, it's gone. So
flies right out of your head.
Yeah. So it's clearly high on the agenda. So
yeah, it's good. It's really good. It's deservedly like a top 50 movie of all time, maybe top 10. So if you do get a chance to watch it.
You said you were trying to go through the AFI 100 or something like that?
I just looked at the list because watching Jaws and watching Chinatown was kind of like, oh, what other movies are on here that I haven't seen? And there are obviously 100 movies. They're like considered to be the top 100 American movies of all time. And I think it had a countdown, a checklist, and I think I'd seen about 47 to 50 of those titles. And some of them I'm like, I don't really want to watch them. Like, I don't have any interest in the movies, just aren't something that catches my attention. But I do want to watch Casablanca and I want to watch Oliver Twist.
I've seen that.
No, what's Orson Welles? Jesus Christ. What is considered the best movie of all time? Everybody always says
Citizen Kane.
Citizen Kane. I do want to watch Citizen Kane. I haven't seen. I've only seen like watch small parts of that. Mank?
Nope. The Orson Welles wine commercial.
Ah, the French champagne.
And all
I've seen that several times.
That's worth watching.
I've also seen Transformers the movie, so I'm familiar with all of Orson Welles' work now.
I don't think I had. Are you talking about the cartoon?
Yeah,
Transformers the movie or the Michael Bay ones?
No,
okay.
Fuck no, Michael Bay. Fuck that guy.
I was gonna say I haven't seen the Michael Bay ones. I don't know. I haven't seen them.
You're not missing anything at all except Marky Mark and Shia LaBeouf. Anyways, wrapping up with what I've seen, I watched. Also, amongst other things, I watched Dark Side of Comedy about Phil Hartman. That was the one that came out a while ago, and I just hadn't seen it yet.
I know too much about that story. That might be a hard one to go back and watch.
Yeah, the only thing I didn't really know is that I knew he helped create and helped write Pee-wee's Big Adventure, the movie, and he helped Paul Reubens come up with the Pee-wee character and write like the first special and stuff. And I guess after the movie, Paul Reubens, while I think Phil Hartman appeared on the show, Paul Reubens kind of cut him out of the profits, or like his share of what he should have earned off the show, which was, I think they were supposed to split 3% or something.
You gotta get money for cocaine and jerking off, right?
I'm not gonna follow that road. I don't know what you're talking about, and I don't want to know what you're talking about. But he didn't. He
probably shouldn't have said that.
He didn't get his money from the show. He didn't get his cut, so they kind of had a falling out. That's pretty much the only thing I didn't really know about it. But they go into like his, with Dark Side of Comedy, they go into like his upbringing and his history, and I knew that he was like a graphic designer and he did some album covers. I think he did a bunch of the Poco album covers. Poco is a dude that joined the Eagles, was in Poco. Yeah, so he did album covers and stuff. I didn't know that I knew that he did it. I didn't know what he did, and I didn't know how he actually got into Saturday Night Live. But it's an interesting episode. It's probably one of the better ones. But after all that verbal diarrhea, that's pretty much what I've been watching, other than the things I don't remember. Did you watch anything good?
This will probably come out as verbal diarrhea also, but I finished up the end of my holiday watching. I found a movie that was very briefly recommended to me as Mel Gibson plays Santa and Walter Goggins tries to kill him. That was the whole way it was pitched to me. I'm like, what year did this movie come out? And they told me it was like 2020. I'm like, so this is insane Mel Gibson. This is not like 80s and 90s still likable Mel Gibson. Like, no, he's fine in the movie, but he's, way off the beaten path as far as being a likable human being at this point. That's okay. Kind of your typical, like, how Mel Gibson had his good movies. Like, I really like the movie Payback. The Lethal Weapon movies are pretty entertaining for what they are. And then he did a ton of movies that's like, this is kind of an action movie, but it's really just like an excuse for Mel Gibson to walk around growling for like, 45 minutes of screen time. It's kind of closer to one of those. Not the worst thing that I've seen this year, but certainly not the best. Far more entertaining than that was the movie Thanksgiving, which I'd wanted to see probably for the last decade, maybe two, something like that, since Grindhouse came out. And I stand by my initial thought that it's a pretty good movie. It's one of the better movies that's come out in 2023. So last year at this point, but I still feel like it was this is a weird critique, but it looked too fucking good for what the movie is. I really wanted it to embrace the grindhouse feel the way that the other movies that have been spawned from this little double feature have, and it doesn't do that at all. Maybe that's because we're, again, 10-15 years removed from the original release. Maybe he just didn't want to make a shitty looking movie. I don't know, but all in all, it's worth watching. It's got some entertaining shit in it, some good kills, and certainly one that I have a feeling we'll be revisiting in November this year, unless Ninjas kick its ass out of there again. We'll see how that goes. Let's see. So I did watch Five Nights at Freddy's, which I think I saw that was like the most highest grossing horror movie this year, which kind of surprises me. Maybe it's because it's not a hard R. I think it's a PG-13 movie.
Really?
Yeah, it killed in the box office. I know that because it came out right around Halloween. Like I want to say like mid-September, late September, something like that. It's fine. I mean, I know there's games. I have no real knowledge of the games other than that they exist and they have that cracked out looking bear on the cover, which I'm assuming is Freddy, if I remember right.
I believe so.
Yeah, that's all I really know about it, is that they exist. So if there was some kind of Easter eggs or lore or something that I needed or should have had before watching this movie, I didn't have it. I don't feel like I really missed all that much. It's pretty simple. It's really a lot like Willy's Wonderland. I preferred Willy's Wonderland for a number of reasons. I know you said you weren't a big fan of that because of Nicolas Cage, which is still a weird statement, but that's a weird movie.
I just think the whole movie's not great, but I don't begrudge you for liking it.
Well, that's fine.
Not outwardly, at least.
Either way,
I just hold inner grudges about it.
I mean, it's a movie that I feel like you have to compare it to just because it's kind of the same fucking thing. And I thought I even heard that Willy's Wonderland was supposed to be a Five Nights at Freddy's movie, and then something happened with the licensing rights, and they just kind of shoehorned it into what it became, which fine. I think the difference between the two is that you get more of a R-rated take on it. Aside from the Nick Cage aspect, you get an R-rated take, or a harder R-rated take in Willy's Wonderland, which I just thought played a little better. You get a little bit more story in Five Nights at Freddy's, I guess, but it's kind of one of those stories like, do I care? I just kind of want to see these robots fuck things up, you know? Then two other things here. I did watch the Barbie movie, which, you know, I thought fantastic doing that. So I don't know what possessed me to watch it, but
yeah, I was going to ask.
I was kind of interested in it just to kind of see what the commotion was about. And I've seen a lot of males in our age group get really uppity and pissed off at this movie, and I really don't understand why. So you're rolling your eyes and shaking your head. And I'm not saying that from an aspect of like, I could have gone, I didn't hate it. I didn't love it. It's a Barbie movie. It's fine. It kind of feels like an A24 movie without horror movie things happening, if that makes
Well,
any
A24
sense.
makes stuff that isn't just horror. So,
right. But
I mean, it could be one of those.
It's got that kind of
artistic
social undertone that is very common in a A24 type movie, or at least I found that in it. But I mean, it's fine. It's, you know, it's a lot of pink. They say the word Barbie about 1 billion times, which gets old, and then you kind of get used to it. What's his face? Ryan Gosling. I know he's kind of like one of the Hollywood pretty boys, but he is a legit good actor. I give him credit for that. I've liked him in more things than that I've seen him in than hated him in. So I can't really argue that. And he's fine in this. He's entertaining for what he is. But I don't see the point in male of the age, will say 35 to 45, being pissed off that this movie exists. Like, why do you fucking care? It's a Barbie movie.
Why do people invest so much of their personality or so much of their time into getting pissed off about what other people like? I don't understand. I haven't seen the movie. I don't care to. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. I just don't understand why people can't let people like what they like.
But on a lesser extent, it's a fucking Barbie movie. I'm going to guess this movie is pretty much targeted at the whole other gender.
Right.
Not, 40-something-year-old males.
Yeah, this isn't for you. So.
Right. And that's fine too. Like,
sure,
there's no
absolutely.
reason that every movie has to be for me or for you or any in particular group of people. So
or individual.
I think I just watched it. Yeah. I think I just watched it to kind of get an idea of where it was going and, say that I saw it.
Sure.
I think that was really the main driving point. And again, it's not great. It's not bad. It's not something I'm saying that unless someone asks, we're never going to do an episode about it. So that's about it. And it's, again, kind of like Fat Man. It's not the worst thing I saw this year. It's far from the best thing. It's fine. The only other thing I went through is they put a new season of Car Masters Rust Riches. And you like your shows about architecture and shit like that.
Yeah. Yep.
I like shows where they take shitbox cars and make them look all fancy and clean and stuff when they rebuild them from like the ground up. And this is one of them. And the whole premise of the show is like, they get a bunch of goobers in a garage and one chick with like huge boobs. And they say, all right, the premise is that we're going to start with like a super low budget and gradually get a $100 car, turn it into like a $5,000 car, and then flip them up until they get to like their big target or whatever. And I don't really give a shit about that. I just like seeing them rebuild the cars and seeing the shit become like a rust bucket to something that's cool and like, wow, that would look entertaining to drive.
And just for the record, I'm guessing I'm not into architecture. I mean, I like architecture. I think it's kind of cool, but I don't know anything about architecture. So it's just like, oh, that looks
Sure.
cool. So I'm assuming that you're not really big into cars. It's just kind of the process of tearing it down and building it back up and making it something that's decent.
Yeah, I don't know shit about cars. I know what I like to look at. There's things I do.
Boobs
Like, I'm not opposed
on the chick. Ah.
I mean, that's not a downside. Let's be real. I'm not opposed to going to like, here we do the Dream Cruise every year, which is like this big, Michigan thing where a bunch of cars just drive up and down one of our main roads here. I'm not opposed to going that and hanging out if I can, crash somewhere until traffic clears up, like at 11 o'clock at night. But I also don't have I drive a standard model SUV. I don't do anything crazy with my vehicles. I have if I had $1 billion to buy whatever car I wanted, it wouldn't be anything fancy. It'd probably just be like a Jeep with bigger tires or something. I don't know. But we all have our own stupid things that we fall in rabbit holes with. Car shows tends to be one of mine. Go figure.
Just to fact check you, not to think that you didn't know what you were talking about. Five Nights at Freddy's is the biggest horror movie of 2023, earning over $280 million at the box office. And it said that it pushed Blumhouse, and I don't know if it's Blumhouse's like entire box office of all
Fuck
time.
all of them.
It's like $3 billion Blumhouse has made. And it was Blumhouse's biggest grossing movie, just for the record.
Ever or this year?
No, ever for Blumhouse, I believe.
Wow.
It's on 2 different pages, and I got to flip back and forth, and I can't be bothered to do all that.
That's actually surprising that it's their biggest grossing film ever.
It says,
I would have thought the first Halloween movie would be up there, or didn't they do the Rob or were those, I think those might have been Time Warner or whatever. Anyway,
via Screen Rant,
it says
Blumhouse has been producing movies since the early 2000s. It's delivered some of the best horror franchises, and I roll my eyes at that, like Paranormal Activity, Insidious, The Purge, and many others. Five Nights at Freddy's is only one of them, and it became Blumhouse's highest grossing release worldwide of all time, with $284.1 million at the time of publication. It was also the 19th Blumhouse movie to be number one at the domestic box office. Another thing to note is that Five Nights at Freddy's pushes Blumhouse's total domestic box office to over $3 billion, further establishing the brand as a titan in the horror field.
Does it say what it knocked off? What was number one before it?
No, it doesn't.
There's
not much on the site that tells anything besides that. It's not linked or anything that says that.
Oh, it's fine. I like I said, I heard it was doing really well. I didn't realize it was the best movie financially that they had ever made. Okay, good enough. Got anything else you want to touch on before we take a break?
No. Nope.
All right. So we will be back in just a minute. We're going to talk about the continuing saga of aerobics and horror in the movie Death Spa.
Hey fam, Newman here from Movies for Days, your non-pretentious easy access movie chat podcast and weekly deep dive into any film from any genre, from any decade with anybody's guess as to how we chose that movie that week. Proud member of the You Run Podcast Network. Check us out where all great podcasts can be heard. And on Twitter at Movies Days. Movies is spelled regular, Days is spelled with a Z.
All right, so we're back and continuing our month-long New Year's resolution movie list with aerobics and horror. We're talking about the movie Death Spa. This movie came out in 1988, I believe.
Seems it's kind of disputed.
Don't have it in front of me now. Okay,
I've seen
we'll
87,
go with that.
I've seen 88, 90, who knows?
I've also seen this movie called Witch Bitch, depending on where you look. I think Death Spa is a better title, at least for the purposes of this month, and you will not see both of them on the title card for this episode, unlike the last episode, because we didn't know what the hell to call the last episode. We always start with a third-party review, and this week is no exception. We are starting with a review from Carlos I, or maybe Carlos L. I don't know. It's hard to tell. I can't give it too high of points because of how goddamn ridiculous it is. But I mean, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't having fun with it. It's the perfect schlocky movie to have on at any party with a few beers. 3 stars out of 5, which actually that's probably a pretty fair review.
Yeah, it's pretty respectable.
Sean, tell us what this movie's about that we're going to be chatting on.
All right, so we head over to IMDb and we start with the storyline. We got the storyline, we got the plot. We'll start with the storyline. It's very long, very obtuse, but I'm going to read it anyways. It says, gruesome, fuck it up.
Gruesome.
Gleepin, glappin, gloop, gloobin.
Turned a little Borat for a second there.
Gruesome deaths begin to occur at a hip Los Angeles health club. Super long. And then we go down to the storyline, care of Josh Pasnick. You can find him at Chainsaw at intouch.bc.ca, which I'm assuming is British Columbia, Canada. And it says Michael's Health Club is besieged with a series of terrible murders involving killer saunas and other grisly devices. Michael's wife killed herself a while before, and her brother holds Michael responsible. Michael needs to stop the bloodshed before he loses all of his clients. Tagline, I'll just add the tagline because those are so short. Strange things are brewing at the local gym. What an amazing tagline that is.
And since I'm looking at it, we'll go ahead and this is one of those movies that has some great keywords to search with it. Just off the bat, the first 5 in here. Female full frontal nudity, female nudity, health club, slasher, mass murder. You know what? We're kind of right where we need to be to start the new year.
Yes.
So
appropriate.
Yes. So this movie doesn't really have a whole ton of people that you would know other than Ken Foree in it.
Yeah.
I want to start with him because I want to ask you the question, where does one get the amazing Technicolor suit coat and how can I obtain one? Because it's not necessarily the opening scene. It's like the second time you see him in the movie, because the first scene he's just like walking out in the dark, but they show him walking through the gym in this gigantic rainbow suit coat as he's like spotting a guy. I kind of get the impression that he's his character's name is Marvin, which I think they say it like once near the end of the movie. Regardless of his name, I get the impression he's supposed to be like the gym buff guy that's there just kind of like the White Goodman of the gym that's just encouraging people on the floor. We found out later that there's a little bit of a chopping mall vibe where the whole gym has the ability to be controlled from a computer where if they think you're slacking, they can up the weight and fuck you over.
Wait a minute. Number one, to describe his jacket, it's like a Michael Jackson Thriller style. I mean, that's leather, but this would be like the rainbow version of that. I don't think that they
mixed with the Technicolor Dreamcoat.
Oh, absolutely. But I don't think if you're kind of fucking off, they increase the resistance. I think they were just playing a joke on this guy. But that would be really funny if they're like, that guy's not doing it. Let's up the resistance and not tell him.
It would be. I think it'd be great. Either way.
Put it on a bar or something. I mean, I know that it's free weights, so but that would be most entertaining.
Anyway, let's go back to the look of these characters because again, Marvin's jacket is spectacular, but this is the most 80s looking gym ever. Everything is just guy or girl, you're wearing spandex, you're probably wearing leg warmers. Shoes seem fairly optional in this gym. It is, aside from the fact that, there's a lot of moments with just a whole bunch of nudity in this, the garb in this alone is almost worth the price of admission.
And the one thing that I noticed too about this is we talked about Aerobicide last week, or Killer Workout. Killer Workout. I couldn't think of what the alternate name was. But we talked about that last week, and that one seems to be a little bit more, they kind of like sexualize the aerobics or the workouts. It's mostly aerobics that they focus on. I mean, it's called Aerobicide. And this one kind of centers more around a health spa or like a gym, has a sauna, has a pool, all that stuff. And while there is a lot of nudity in this movie, it plays it very differently, where Aerobicide's kind of campy on purpose. David A. Pryor knows that he's not making Citizen Kane. He's making fucking Aerobicide. This movie, the director of this, we should mention, is Michael Fisher. I believe Michael Fisher, or whoever was responsible for the look of this movie, I'm assuming it's Michael Fisher, feels like he's more trying to capture the serious vibe, which an ominous kind of horror vibe to it. And the thing that nothing's more ominous than the beginning of the movie with a thunder and lightning storm going on outside your gym. and the sign getting hit by lightning, and Starbody Health Spa, all the lights dimming out except the ones that say Death Spa. I don't think there's anything you could do that's more ominous and serious than lead the movie with that.
I think it's a good look, though. Like, I actually like that lead in for the title card. I was like, all right, it's a little cheesy, it's a little tacky, and that's kind of a reoccurring theme for this movie, is cheesy and tacky in a lot of ways. It works, though. And there's a lot of things that happen in this movie that are kind of very, very loosely held together, and they're kind of explained off of, sure, whatever, and we just move on to the next thing.
Yes. That
might be a recurring theme in this, too. But the look overall, the costuming, the lack of costuming, the gym itself, it's got a good vibe as far as being a place where you're probably going to die because it's called Death Spa.
And before we get too into it, I just wanted to mention, if you're interested in watching this movie, which you should, because it's a fucking masterpiece, it is available on multiple streaming sites for free. Tubi's one of them. Plex has it for free. You can rent it on Vudu and Hoodoo and Amazon, the things that you don't dare do. On all those other things for about $4. You can buy it for $8 to $10. So just to put that out there.
So I forgot there is one other actor in this movie that we should mention. Hillary from The Fresh Prince is in this movie.
Yeah, she is.
That.
So, just for a short amount of time, but she's
this is her first role before she was in Fresh Prince, isn't it? This is predating that, I believe.
It is definitely predating it, yeah.
So yeah, you have all the stars out to play in this movie.
Yes.
We don't usually break down scene by scene, but I like how this movie basically starts with, again, they're closing up the gym after you see the Death Spa sign light up. And we basically go, within a matter of minutes, this girl's just going to go finger bang herself in the sauna for a while. And we'll see what happens. And it's almost like tasteful, but it's not, because it's a horror movie. It's kind of, I don't know. I haven't been in a sauna in quite a long time. It wasn't something that I was into, but I've never seen someone just lay down on a sauna bed and start like groping themselves, which was like, well, it's a very touchy-feely spa, we come to find out. So
yes, and unfortunately, her session of self-love ends fairly abruptly when she notices a dark gas coming out of the sauna. It's not like a typical sauna where they have the rocks and you put the water on it, but it's actually the steam is feeding through like something on the roof of the.
It's a very
the
1980s looking sauna. Like, if you have to use a much bigger movie, if you ever saw the movie Blues Brothers, there's a sauna scene in that where it's just like looks like a giant white tile bathroom.
Yeah, it's almost like a bathhouse kind of sauna rather than a personal.
That's pretty
sauna.
much what this is.
But chlorine gas starts coming out and it burns her eyes, and she can't escape. Somehow the room is locked. The sauna is locked with just a window to get out. And we later learn the sauna door never locks. It doesn't even lock. I don't know how she couldn't get out of it. She ends up smashing the window to escape and is admitted to the hospital. Michael, the owner, is called to the hospital to say, hey, whatever her name is, Laura. I think it's Laura. Laura's in the hospital.
We'll go.
No, Laura is not. Laura's Laura. Sorry. I'm getting people confused because the thing about this movie, before we get too much into it, again, I want to interrupt with this non sequitur. I mean, I guess it's a sequitur. The thing about this movie is that there are characters that come and go that look like other characters. I didn't know who one of the characters was, like almost halfway through the movie. Well, probably more than halfway through the movie when they show up again. And then I realized it was like Michael's lawyer, and he just didn't show up for long periods of time. So characters are very like nondescript unless they are some of the main people.
Michael.
Because Michael, David, who's let's explain this. So Michael, we talked about it in the storyline, but Michael is married to a woman at one point, and we find out as the movie goes along that she has like self-immolated herself. She's doused herself with gasoline. She lit herself on fire. She was paralyzed due to this birth that didn't go well. I think the baby may have died. Her twin brother, Michael's brother-in-law, is like the computer expert. He's like the dude that has set up the entire system for this gym. And the gym's real high tech. Everything's controlled by computers. Like John mentioned.
He's basically Newman from Jurassic Park.
Yes.
Nedry.
And this guy, not as cool.
Not poorly.
Or poorly. I mean, I don't see shapes. I don't see body shape. I wasn't trying to bring that up.
That's bullshit, and you know it.
Anyways, before John had to interject that offensive content into this podcast, David is kind of like, he runs the whole thing. He runs all the computers, and he's the twin of Michael's ex-wife or former wife, I guess. I don't really know. So where was I going before I mentioned all that? Oh,
The most of these characters are kind of there
Cookie cutter.
The thing about these characters, you've kind of mentioned two that are somewhat relevant, and even the characters that you think are going to be relevant, like at some point they get a paranormal doctor detective dude type thing going on.
he's a paranormal investigator.
Right. You think maybe he's going to be relevant, but he's relevant in the way that a lot of characters are in horror movies. Like he's there to kind of add, he doesn't really add a lot other than a body count, you know?
Yeah.
You have these two cops that are recurring through the movie that they stick out like a sore thumb because the one is like a tub of shit and constantly eating and has one of the most interesting deaths I've seen in quite a few movies,
Yes.
which I'm sure we'll get to.
And the other one's Rosalind Cash.
Yeah.
So I guess is the other
but-
character that you might recognize. I don't know.
But really, aside from, was that 5 people, 6 people that we've mentioned?
Yeah.
Again, you'll recognize Ken Foray because he's Ken Foray, and if you watch horror movies, you're gonna recognize him from something, whether it's a newer movie or an older movie. He's been around fucking ever. But most of the characters that are in this, they're just in here for either being a body, as far as a body count, or a body as in eye candy. That's the majority of what this movie is. And there's the one weird European dude who can't figure out how to exercise like everyone else. And that's about it.
And the other thing that I was going to mention, though, that makes this movie more confusing with all the characters is that it feels like the movie doesn't know what it wants to be. There's elements of like computers, computer hacking. There's elements of like, I don't want to say corporate espionage because it's not really corporate, but like one of the subplots is that the owner, Michael, all these things are happening in his gym and he thinks he's being sabotaged by his partner and the manager of the gym. So there's that subplot. There's like this haunted house kind of feel to the movie. So we got the hacking. Oh, there are so many red herrings, so many like things to throw you off the case that you never get solid footing as to what the case is. What is the issue here? I mean, I realize people are dying, but what's the motivation?
Well, it's also, I mean, spoilers for this movie sells itself as a slasher movie.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways. And I guess, but really, the further you go into this movie, it's really more of a ghost story than it is a slasher story.
Yeah, it's very much haunted house.
It really takes you about 50 minutes to kind of figure that out because they almost like, as you mentioned, the red herrings are so aplenty.
Red and stinky.
And the characters are so thin as far as like being written and like having lack of any development that it's really just we talk about movies being a vessel of one action sequence to another or things like that. I don't know that this is quite what that is, but it's really just like a special effects like smorgasbord with the occasional character that shows up to say, let's exercise or let's go into we haven't had a group shower in a little bit. Let's go give that a try.
We haven't been in a group dance class yet. Just to reiterate, like, I don't know if I can reiterate. I don't know if I've iterated, but regardless of how all these red herrings, these plot holes, the thinness of the characters, not really understanding what's going on, it kind of feels like it's kill to kill, like you don't really, and which kind of follows like the slasher vibe. It's fun as shit. Like getting there entire time is super fun. Well, what you don't know what is going on. It is like a fever dream, but it is fun the whole time. I mean, you could listen to what we've said so far.
Absolutely.
And be like, well, this movie sounds like a mess. And guess what? It kind of is a mess, but it's kind of an awesome mess.
It's one of those rare cases where it feels like they put everything in a blender, pun somewhat intended, and just kind of ran with it. It doesn't feel like they had a real storyboarded idea out as far as story goes, but it seems like they had a lot of ideas like, we want to have 6 naked girls in the shower and then kill a bunch of them by having tiles shoot off the wall and cut them up and crazy shit. And then they're all run out naked and scream and stuff because that will be fun.
And when you think of that scene,
action,
the shower scene, you think of it like we're trying to establish that it's the computer. It's like the computer system's fucked up, right? And that's what's killing people because we have the first thing is the sauna with the chlorine gas. It burns the woman. I think the next thing is 6 or 8 women are taking a shower together and you get to see multiple shots of them and, all their glory. And all of a sudden the showers start steaming up and the lights start flashing and then tiles start popping off the walls. And I think the guy, David, the main computer guy, the twin brother in the movie, brings it up. He's like, you can blame the thing on the computer, but we can't blame tiles flying off the wall and hitting people on the computer. That's not something the computer can do. And it's just instances like that throughout the movie of like, is it the computer? Is it someone sabotaging the air conditioning system to make it warm in the place? Is it tiles popping off the wall and hitting people? Is it machinery going rogue? It's all over the place. And the great thing that they really thought about to work into this movie is that I don't think we're going to get to the culmination of the movie yet, but it all happens around Mardi Gras, this big Mardi Gras party at the end of the movie. So there's a great excuse for everybody to dress up in costume. So if you didn't recognize anybody before, for sure as shit, you're not going to recognize a single person because some of them are in masks and some of them aren't.
Aside from Ken Foray.
Yes. Yeah, he's the only one that pretty much you can still tell is Ken Foray.
I do think this movie is kind of funny because the more I watched it, the more I was recognizing, like, I don't think this movie had much of a budget except for the cars that they're driving around. Like, they got a Lambo at one point, like, hauling ass up the road. They had a couple Porsches. They had, like, the cops had, like, a muscle car or some. I was like, where does this car budget come from compared to the rest of this movie?
That cop car was bunked up, though. It was all dinged up. It was missing trim, but it was great.
So let's talk about some of the effects, because this movie is, if you like practical effects, this is a pretty good movie for you, because I don't know, is there any that you want to point out specifically, or do we want to just kind of talk as an overarching, because I kind of have a feeling about this movie as an overarching opinion.
Yeah, I don't think necessarily that when you say practical effects, that doesn't necessarily insinuate that they look good. Like,
no.
Some of them do look okay. Some of them don't.
It's a lot of melty, goopy shit in this. So if you like movies like Frankenhooker, stuff like that, with a lot of stuff just kind of being splattery, but not necessarily splatter like, you know, in slasher movie sense, like unexplained, melty shit, you know, reanimator type of shit, this is probably your kind of movie.
There's one in particular that made no sense to me. And it's when the manager goes, she has the Harlequin kind of clown costume, and she goes into that room after she got, I don't know, her head's like bloody, and I think she must have gotten hit or something. She goes into a room that's just a mirror, and the mirror starts waving. It's like aluminum foil or something, and it explodes, and she just shatters. Like, her body turns into pieces, like her mouth and her lips are like laying on the floor because it's just totally shattered off of her body. It makes absolutely no sense. Don't know why that happened. Don't know how that happened, but it's great. It deserves to be there because while not the best looking thing, it's kind of emblematic of the effects in this movie.
Again, this is a reoccurring theme in this movie, though. The effects with the steam and the chlorine smoke at the beginning with the eyes screwing up the first chick, the tiles, like, I'm sure if you take the time to pause it and slow it down, especially if you're watching on like 1080p or higher, you'll see fishing line all over that shower. You're just distracted because there's boobs and butts and every other thing. And why am I looking for fishing line right now? That's not the priority. You know, these effects are not like, you're not getting, you know, Tom Savini making this movie by any stretch, but what you are getting is just, you know, schlock is kind of the right word as far as the effects go. They're goofy, they're silly, they're gross. They kind of look like they smell at times, and they're very entertaining, and they kind of really do hold this movie together, because for all the things you could say about the story and the plot, whenever it gets to the point where it's like, oh, we're losing them, they just do something ridiculous. Like, just do something utterly ridiculous. Well, we haven't talked about it yet, so we'll talk about it now. You know, you mentioned this big party that they get to, and all of a sudden you have a cop that's in a freezer, and this is kind of when you realize the computer, like, for sure the computer's not what's doing this. Is the cop gets, I forget how he gets wrestled into the freezer, thrown in there, and
he gets sucked in. The door opens. There's a bar. This is a favorite scene of mine. The bartender's making drinks, and she proclaims, "Hey, you know, we're all out of booze. You got to go to the
or whatever
aerobics room, yeah, or something." And she's doing something with the blender. She's like, I think they found vodka or something. The detective is like, he's in his late 40s, early 50s, and he's hitting on this woman who's clearly in her 20s or whatever. And she's taking the bait.
He does not. He looks like your typical like TV dirtbag.
Yeah, cop, like the detective or something. And she starts doing something, and her hand gets sucked into the blender. Well, she's holding basically a bowl with a silver bottom. There's no way this is a blender. There's no way, like, there's no mechanism in here to have any blender piece in it. And she basically, her hand gets cut up, and there's so much blood on the floor. It's like 10 bodies got cut up. And as he's like, oh my God, would help. And people are like around, but they're not paying attention because she's just been flailing around behind the bar. And the freezer opens up, a big bright white light is behind him, and he's holding It's one of those scenes where he's like holding onto a counter and his legs have been lifted out from under him. He's like, oh, and he just gets sucked in the freezer, and even more madness ensues. Like all the champagne bottles, because they didn't have booze, but they did because it's in the freezer. All the bottle tops are popping off. All the corks are popping off. It's making this big mess. And a fish that they were making sushi with, that's like a barracuda with the sharp teeth, starts wiggling around and looks at him and like flies at him, slow motion like, and bites him in the neck. And that's how our poor detective friend gets taken out. It's the most ridiculous thing. Like it makes no sense whatsoever how all these events would come together.
It's both the best and the worst murder weapon I've ever seen in my life is a dead
A
fish.
frozen fish.
So that kind of gives you an idea of the apex of this movie. Again, we're kind of talking circles on it because it's a hard movie to kind of piece together from a storyline. I guess the only thing we could really say is like as I mentioned, this is really more what we end up finding out is the ghost of the dead wife is possessing the brother-in-law of the gym owner.
Yeah, her twin
shows
brother.
you how well this is written. Yeah, her twin brother, who is in turn,
He's like shape-shifting.
yeah, he's like paranormally like pulling the strings essentially of all these deaths, is what we find out. Which again, this is one of the many things in this movie where I'm just like, yeah, sure, whatever. Let's just go with that. We can, as good a reason as you've given me for anything else.
My favorite line, when they can't get around the gym because it's all like computerized and the doors are locked, Rosalind Cash, one of the detectives, says my favorite quote of the movie, fuck this computer shit. And she just shoots the door and it opens the door and it's just ridiculous. It's just, it's the best. It's what you would expect.
I do like the scene during the party where Michael goes running through the party and jumps out of the party through a window and no one cares. Like, it's like nothing happened. Like, the entire party is unfazed.
Inner windows of the place are busted up. Nobody even looks in the direction.
Not even 10 seconds later, Ken Foree gets thrown into the party through a separate window, and you would have thought that they just thrown the president in there through a window. Like, it's insane. Like, the amount of... And fair enough, I love Ken Foree, so all the more reason to be upset that he's getting, roughed up. But it's kind of funny seeing the difference between the two, where one of them, again, is literally goes head first out a window, and it's like, hey, we're dancing, we got aerobics to do, whatever,
Yeah, booze to drink.
Yeah, well, and fair enough, I guess. Mardi Gras is a thing. Do we have anything else we really want to hit on with this? I feel like if we keep going, we're either going to end up like just scattershotting the entire attempt at a story, or end up just circling on stuff. I mean, do you have other things you really want to point out?
Well, I don't want to give away the ending because I do think this is like big time for at least personally. And I think I speak for you too. This movie is a big time recommend. I want to save it for my postscript, I guess, whatever the rundown of like my rating. But the way that this movie ends is just beautiful. It's nonsensical. It ends. And then it's like a freeze frame and a fade to black. And that's it. The credits roll. No explanation. You never get told why anything happened. There's no like, oh, and such, went to jail. There's no like even little thing where they write what happened to all the characters. It just ends.
No prologue. Yeah.
None of that shit. None of those big words. It ends. And that's it. And then the credits roll and then the movie stops and you go on with your life. This is, in the words of our host, John, this is a perfect movie to shut your brain off because you will not be able to follow anything. Just shut your brain off. Watch the fucking movie. That's all I have to say. We can get to hot dogs if you have nothing to add.
All right. So I'm going to kick us off with hot dogs then, because I'm going to let you, I have a feeling you're going to rant a little more than I will on this one.
No.
Or not rant, but
no, I know what you mean.
Whatever the good
Ramble.
version of rant is. Yeah.
Rave.
But you're right. This is this is one of the few movies that in the time that we've been doing this show that you flat out said, I have a homework assignment for you, and you told me to watch.
You need to watch this.
And you were right. I think I watched it like within a week or two, and I was like, no, he's right. This is a fun movie. It's not by any stretch a perfect movie. Like, it, again, if you're really looking for story, if you're really looking for reasoning or an explanation or stellar acting, anything outside of the best high five that you're going to see in film this week, it doesn't necessarily deliver on that. But again, who cares? This is one of those movies that is exactly that. It gives you just enough to be entertained. You're going to be entertained through the whole movie. If you don't go more than 5 minutes without seeing a boob or a murder or both, sometimes at the same time, this is the definition of a no thinky have fun movie. It is just that. it pairs really well with the other movies that we'll be talking about in the aerobics month. So if you want to just have like a very 80s feeling night and marathon aerobicide, this and the next movie that we'll talk about, this is a good like bridge for those three films. Again, the effects are fun. It looks great. It's got a good vibe to it. It is a horror movie that is kind of upbeat in the sense that like it doesn't make you feel like if you're in a good mood, but you want to watch a horror movie, you don't want something that's going to be a bummer or like too realistic. This is a good one to put in for that. Like you can just kind of have fun with it. So I give it a solid 6.5 flying murder barracudas out of 10 hot dogs. I don't know if that sounds low. I mean, there's plenty of flaws to go around, but it's definitely one that's infinitely rewatchable and worth having on your shelf.
You took my finish. You
Sorry.
took the fish. Now I got to think of something else.
I had to go first for a reason.
I know. Had to take my whatever we call that, my hot dog. Hey, you took my hot dog. Just off the bat, before I even get into it, there are multiple times in this movie where people die and they just go missing in the club for days at a time. And when they get found, it's kind of like a Robicide where nobody is like alarmed that dead people are found in this place. Just like, well, whatever. Back to the weights or whatever, the dance class we got going on. Let me say, the actual storyline of this movie, as I mentioned earlier, it's all over the place. Characters appear, disappear, reappear throughout the entire movie. No explanation. We don't know who they are. We don't know why they're important. And the movie is just full. It's got a bucket full of red herrings to try and throw you off the scent of what's actually going on. By the end of the film, I had no clue what was even supposed to be happening. As I mentioned earlier, it's like a drug-induced fever dream. It doesn't make much sense, and it definitely doesn't take itself too seriously. But I think those things, because it just throws everything at the wall and it's just so silly and so fun, that's what I really love about the movie. Is it supposed to be a movie about a computer system that's gone rogue? Is it supposed to be a corporate gym takeover movie? Is it supposed to be a haunted house? Who the fuck knows? And again, that part of me, I love it. I just love that they let all this batshittery lay out there with no explanation whatsoever. The ending makes no sense. It just happens. It just ends. I love that about the movie. From me, I'm going to have to give it 7 hanger poles out of 11 hot dogs. If you just have to see the movie to know what the fuck I'm talking about. It's just, it's out there. It did its thing. It tried. It's a great movie.
We're pretty much right in lockstep on this one as far as where it stands. So yeah, this is a great one though. And I agree like 100%. This, as fun as Aerobicide is, and I think we both like that one quite a bit too. This one finds a way to top it just by being so fucking ludicrous in every possible way. And Aerobicide's pretty ludicrous too, but it's tied together slightly better. Like instead of using dental floss to tie together, it uses actual rope, where this is like, it uses dental floss and it's kind of tying knots between different leads of dental floss.
And Aerobicide came out first. When I initially saw Aerobicide and I saw this, I like Aerobicide, but I liked this one more. I thought this one was probably the one that you would want to, if you save the best for last, this would be the one that you'd watch second. But after watching Aerobicide again, and then watching this one again, I still do like this one more, but I feel like Aerobicide is a lot better than I initially would give it credit for. If the first time I saw it years ago, I'd be like, oh no, that was hilarious. It's funny and it's just goofy. But watching it again, I like it more if you don't think of it, and this isn't an Aerobicide episode, but I like it more if you don't think of it as like a slasher and you think of it more as like a suspense, where that one actually has people that are responsible, as ridiculous as it is.
Right.
This one is just like, it's all the way out there. It's like they didn't hold anything back. It's just all the crazy ideas that they had, and they just did what they could to mush them all together. And there's a character that shows up when the girl that's blind comes home to Michael. She's living with Michael while she recovers. A woman comes and delivers groceries.
A woman who's blind in a house that has
no
more
banisters,
stairs without railings.
She's just stumbling around.
I would have loved to see a scene where she just like biffs and eats shit down those stairs in the worst possible way, but gets up and is fine.
Ass over apple cart.
I'm talking like these stairs it's only like 2 directions that it goes, but they're essentially circular stairs. I would have loved to see her just go right off the top of it, just tumble right down to the ground level.
Did a pratfall. Though a woman comes and delivers groceries. I have no idea who that woman was. She's like supposedly somebody you're supposed to know. I don't know who that is. She just showed up and she drove away and that was it. Like you never heard from her before.
In a Porsche.
Yeah.
So,
well, it was like it's a convertible. I don't know what it was, but it was just like, okay, that's cool.
All right. So This question of the week really has nothing to do with this movie, but we're kind of right at the beginning of the year, so we're going to go with it anyway. Question of the week is what films, horror or otherwise, are you looking forward to in the year 2024? I can guarantee you none of them are going to be as fun as Death Spot, for sure. We will start on Instagram this week, so you can follow us at Dewey Podmonster on there and everywhere. And we have two right off the top that are saying that both KS Bruce 88 and Blood and Feathers 87 both say that they're looking forward to Beetlejuice. Blood and Feathers 87 added, he just wants to see how bad they fuck it up and it flops. I don't think it's going to flop. They might fuck it up, but I think it's going to make a ton of money. Our good friends over at the You Run podcast, Scott said he is looking forward to the Crow reboot and that it is going to be lit. I'll watch it, but respectfully, Scott, I have very low expectations. If I've learned anything from The Crow, it's that they're not very good at continuing that franchise thus far.
They had Eddie Furlong.
And yes, that was a thing. So wasn't he like pudgy, drugged up Eddie Furlong at that point?
I believe he was, yeah.
Trying to stuff himself into some leather. Very breathable fabric. Over on Facebook, same thing as everywhere else. You can find us at Dewey Podmonster. John, our good friend John, I don't want to give out his last name, so we're just going to say John. That is not me. Said, I'm going to go with the Ghostbusters movie because the previous one wasn't the best thing ever, but Reitman's heart was in the right place. Not to mention, I felt the tribute to Harold Ramis was emotional and respectful. My other pick would be Godzilla x Kong. The last one was probably my favorite out of the Western Zilla Kong movies. High potential for disappointment, as we know how the Hollywood machine works with rushing out another addition to a profitable franchise without prioritizing quality, but I'm a sucker for a kaiju movie nonetheless. I'll watch it. I didn't really like the last Godzilla vs. Kong movie. I thought did you see it?
Is that Kong Island or whatever the fuck it's called?
No, there's Godzilla vs. Kong that it came out during COVID, I think.
Yeah, isn't that, what's that?
Skull Island was just
Skull Island. Oh, okay, yeah, and then I didn't. I saw Skull Island on a plane, and I probably fell asleep through half of it, so I didn't see. I
liked that for the most part, but the Godzilla vs. Kong it had moments that was okay. Just this is a stupid comment because it's a Godzilla movie in 2023 or 2022, whenever it came out, but the CG was just too CG for me, and I know I'm never going to get another guy in a rubber suit, I'm sure, but I don't know. I've watched all these new Godzilla movies, and I feel like some of them have done way better with that than others have, for whatever that's worth, which is absolutely fucking nothing, because what does my opinion matter? Let's go over to Twitter, X, whatever, where we have the most responses, as per usual. So, our friends over at Podcast in the Woods, I'm assuming this is Boomer, said he is looking forward to Maxine because he loves Ty West. Alien Romulus, which looks like a return to form for the franchise, and how could you go wrong with the director of Evil Dead? And Shelby Oaks, which was part of the Kickstarter. He was part of the Kickstarter campaign to fund the film, and really interested to see how the Passion Project turns out. I didn't even realize there was a new Alien movie coming out, so sounds.
I knew about it. I know nothing about what it's about.
I really hated the last one, the Danny McBride one. So I think that was Covenant.
Yeah, I didn't even see that.
I really hated it.
I saw Prometheus, but I don't see the second Prometheus. Is that
the first one was okay. The second one I did not like at all. I don't want to shit on because I know that's such like a important franchise to people. I don't want to shit on it if people do like it, but the last two that they did, I had a really hard time with. I have a really hard time with a movie that comes out like in 20 whatever, and it looks, forget the effects from it. It looks dramatically worse than the movie that came out in 1978. Like that's a problem for me. Anyway, back to Twitter. The Sinister Scoop at Sinister Scoop 6 says it is a three-way tie for most anticipated between Ghostbusters, Nosferatu, and Silent Hill. Franken J Stein 35 is excited for Saw 11. I think that's what it is. XI is 11, right?
Yeah.
Roman numeral.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Saw 11. Let's see. At Jazzy Ants just says all of them. Cool. Our friends over at Dissect That Film, currently they are Dissect That New Year, said they're looking forward to Return to Silent Hill, Ghostbusters, Nosferatu, Alien Romulus, and Beetlejuice 2. Just Jody at Just Jody Hart said he is 100% looking forward to Nosferatu. Bottom left of the midden, or BL at BL of the midden, said A Quiet Place, Day One, and The Strangers Trilogy, but I'll probably watch all these movies, referring to an image that I posted earlier. And then our friend at HissyFaceX, Pearl had mentioned Terrifier 3. I'm hoping it's a prequel where they explain the dad's visions and the sketchbook and how it's connected to art without turning it into a 2.5 hour long shit show. And for Maxine, so that people will shut the fuck up about it. And Mia Goth, insert barf face here. So in other words, she does not like X and Pearl, which we didn't like X. We didn't watch Pearl. So Sean, are you looking forward to anything this year that's coming out? Do you have any movies that you're excited for?
A couple. The thing that, well, I guess the few that I'm looking forward to is Dune 2, which I think comes out in March. I'd like to see how they wrap that thing up. Well, I guess they want to have a part 3 too, but whatever. And then Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. I mean, I am looking forward to seeing how they do.
The same
guy.
I'm sure it's the same guy that did the last 4 or 3.
Yeah, Matt. Let me look it up.
Basically all the ones after the Tim Burton one. It's like 3 or 4 of them.
Oh, Wes Ball. I don't think he did the other ones. I don't believe it's the same director, but I like the trilogy that happened before. I really liked them. I thought they were really good. So I'm kind of looking forward to seeing what they do with it. The thing that I wanted to bring up, though, like you on the post that you had posted, it's kind of like it's a grid of all the stuff that's coming out and the movies that I mentioned. Can we just have a new thing? How many of these things on here are sequels? They're prequels. So on this list,
I'm actually looking forward to the first thing that's on here, which is Night Swim.
Yeah, I've seen commercials for that.
I've only seen commercials for that because they're playing them during football games, and I don't really know what's going on in this movie, but it looks like it's going to get kind of gnarly kind of quick, so I'm kind of interested in that. I won't go as far as to say I'm as excited for it, but I am interested in it.
Well, just looking at this
we'll
grid.
come back to
Just looking at this grid.
Yeah, okay. We'll go to that now then. Let's talk about this.
Well, we can get to your answer. I don't want to cut you off, but we have Winnie the Pooh 2. We've got another Ghostbusters movie. The First Omen, which I'm guessing is a prequel to some Omen thing. Godzilla X Kong. Return to Silent Hill. I'm assuming Horoscope may be new. The Strangers, a sequel. The Watchers, probably a sequel to something. A Quiet Place Day 1, another sequel. Speak No Evil. Is that a new thing? Maybe.
Wasn't that Kane movie that he was in?
Oh, well,
Wrestler?
yeah. That now that you bring that up. Alien Romulus. Beetlejuice 2. 11, which I'm assuming is Saw 11. Smile 2. Terrifier 3, Witchboard, there's been a million Witchboards, Maxine, Salem's Lot, a remake, and some Thread, Insidious, The Crow, like all these things.
You're also skipping Nosferatu, Frankenstein, The Wolf Man.
I don't know
and
necessarily. Well, yeah, okay, so those are all remakes, or I don't think they're sequels to the originals. They wouldn't call it the same thing. But why is there like no original idea in here? I mean, they make money. There's no risks. Nobody takes risks.
Well,
on shit.
One of the things I'm looking forward to is Only Things, which is from A&P. They directed our next week's episode, which is Murder Size. They have I'm getting the impression that it's basically a vampire meets OnlyFans type movie, and I'm here for it. But yeah, that and Night Swim are the only two that I would say I'm genuinely excited for right now. And I think I'm more curious about Night Swim just because, again, it looks weird enough based off what I've seen in the commercial or trailer, I guess. But yeah, most of the stuff looking at this, let's be real, like a lot of this is basically like what franchise is your franchise type thing, like on this grid that I posted. And I only put that up there as like a,
conversation
get some
piece.
Ideas.
Yeah. Well, got a conversation
Frankly,
going. Fuck.
And right. I did say that it didn't have to be horror movies. Like, I don't know what else is coming out this year though. Like, other than I'm sure there's a bunch of Marvel stuff.
I'm not looking forward to any horror movies. I'm just looking forward to some movies. Whatever. If they're horror movies, that's great. If they're not, that's fine too. But I mean, like I said, even the ones I mentioned are sequels.
Yeah, well, I didn't do that. So bam.
Fuck.
Points for me.
John, why the fuck did you do that? Yeah, no, it just bothers me. Like, this is not a new thing, and I get it. I understand. It's kind of a rhetorical question that I'm just throwing out to the universe, but
sure, you
can't make anything that's not a sequel or it has some name recognition. It's just like the same thing with games. You can't make anything because, not that you can't, but nobody wants to take a risk because the capitalism, basically, like you need to make money so that you can do the shit for your shareholder, whatever. It's fucking capitalism.
I don't know. I think we'll get a lot of stuff that is new because we always do. I mean, even if you look at just this past in 2022 or 2023, whatever year was last year, again, I'm not talking about the quality of these movies. I'm just saying for the sake of argument, we did have Cocaine Bear, which was a new title. We had Cobweb, It's a Wonderful Knife, which sucked, Totally Killer. These are new titles. There was there are new things that come out, but I think when you're looking at a grid like this, as far as what people are looking at on the calendar, if you put a bunch of stuff out that no one knows what the fuck it is, they don't get excited for it. It actually surprises me that Night Swim, I don't know what this movie Trap is, so I'm assuming that's some kind of new thing. I don't know, maybe it's not. It's a clickbait picture. That's the whole reason why I went up there. I don't think that Winnie the Pooh Blood and Honey 2 is something to be excited about. Like, is it going to be better than the first one? Shouldn't take much, but is that really a highlight of 2024? I sincerely doubt it, but I'm sure we'll get all that stuff. I think that's just the kind of thing that you almost have to be looking for and paying attention to what's coming out, as opposed to marking it on a calendar like a year ahead of time.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Had to get my crabby pants off.
No, you wear those crabby pants and go take a steam and cool off. So,
Gonna take a shit.
yeah, not in the steam room. That'd probably be a bad thing.
A steamer.
A steamer in the steamer.
Mhm.
Cool. So this episode has just gotten pretty gross pretty quick. So anyway, we're going to go ahead and wrap this up at this point, unless you have anything else you want to add about your steaming steamers.
Nope. No Detroit steamers.
No Detroit steamers. Okay. So in the meantime, again, we do ask that you, if you haven't listened to some of our old stuff, please go back and check it out. You can find it on our site, which is atcrap.town, or you can find all our episodes on the You Run Podcast Network site, which is at yourunpodcast.com. You can find all our social medias everywhere that social media is a thing. We are at Dewey Pod Monsters. Search us and you will find us. And check out our YouTube channel. We just had a new live stream go up there a couple weeks ago, so I guess it's not new at that point, but
New to
we're going
you.
to try to do those. Yeah, new to you. We're going to try to do those more and send us messages. Either comment on that live stream or wherever you want to do it. Let us know what you want us to talk about, maybe in a live format or otherwise. And if we like it, we'll do it. If we don't like it, we'll tell you no. Sean, what do you have going on? What do you want to bring up?
I was just going to say, if you want your question of the week answered to the question of the week, do it on Twitter, do it on social media. You can comment on the Spotify page. If you have feedback on the episode, if you still have some good liquor that you think we should drink, because I asked about it a couple weeks ago, give us feedback. Let us know. Otherwise, you can find me and all my stuff, my Michigan beer stuff, at youtube.drafttherapy.com. You can also find me on all the social media at Draft Therapy. If you want to leave us a voice message, you can do it on Twitter. You can send us a message of your video. We could see your face. If you don't want to show us your face, you can spread them and tell us about it while you're spreading them. If you don't want to spread them, you could just send us an audio thing and we'll listen to it. And if we like it, we'll put it up on the thing when you talk about the thing with the answer in the thing. Spread them.
Well, that got weird. So much like the movie Death Spa, we've had enough horny, we've had enough weird, and we've had enough steamers. We're going to talk to you next week. Have a good one. Cheers.
Shadows on the wall. Yes, once they started to dance, you know they didn't stand a chance. Killer Groove got the ball. So lock your windows, lock your doors. The Killer Groove is back for more. Hey, hey.
All right. Need my review up here.
Oh, yeah.
All right. So, yeah. I mean, your plot synopsis on this is all of like half a
I
sentence.
just looked at it. It's great. It's amazing.
I kind of like it, actually.
You know what we didn't do? We didn't include this guy. You didn't ask about you and wiping your ass, and he doesn't even have a name yet.
I guess we'll just have to find a way to put that in there.